everybody. Welcome into Before the Hedges, the Georgia recruiting show. I'm Hannah Chalker. We're so glad to be back on air on Before the Hedges right here live on SEC Country. I've missed you guys. You know, Brandon Adams, Jeff Sintel have been circulating all of the Marlows around the greater Atlanta area, leaving me out, but I'm back. I'm back finally. We got a great show coming up for you today. We're going to talk about how Georgia can overcome Ohio State for the nation's #1 class in 2018, and we have 5 names. We're going to break them all down to be on the lookout for National Signing Day, which is just 2 days away. All right, my partner in crime, Jeff Sintel, is on the recruiting trail, getting the Sintel intel. He's at an undisclosed location, and fans, we want you to guess where he's at. Jeff, I promised him I wouldn't tell. What you doing?
Well, we've got 2 days until National Signing Day 2.0, Hannah. Georgia, will they chase down those Buckeyes and Urban Meyer? Anybody that's on the feed right now, do they think Georgia's going to catch Urban Meyer and those pizza boxes? Will Georgia reel back in the nation's #1 class? And we got a lot to get to, so let's roll off these names.
All right, well, let's start with just that you brought up. What is it going to take for UGA to have the #1 recruiting class in 2018?
Well, it's not going to take a whole lot. I think the big haymaker for Georgia would be a young man named Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell is the highest rated remaining target for Georgia in 2018. He would be 5-star #7 for Bulldogs. That would set the modern record on the 24/7 Sports Composite. Nation's #2 corner, #12 player, 6'2.5". He's a sprinter. He's a football player. He is a guy that Georgia has to add. And the importance of Tyson Campbell is pretty strong here. He's got some indications to Georgia. The crystal balls are pointing towards Georgia. What about Miami? That's where he took his latest and last official visit, hometown Miami. Are the Crimson Tide lurking there in the background as well for Tyson Campbell? I think what happens here, Georgia gets Tyson Campbell. Then you start thinking about what's the best case scenario for Ohio State. That best case scenario would be the nation's #1 offensive tackle, Nicholas Pettit-Frere. If he goes to Ohio State, that would make this thing very interesting. But the chances of the Buckeyes landing the 5-star tackle aren't very good. The odds-on favorites are Florida, Notre Dame, Michigan, and even Alabama's in there as well. Ohio State doesn't really have a good shot at the nation's #1 offensive tackle. But if they do, then Georgia, you got to remember, Ohio State has 24 commitments. Georgia only has 22 commitments. 20 of those are signees. And should Georgia, lots of names here, should they get a big dollop of Tyson Campbell, and then they add just a smattering, not all of them, but they get some names like Quay Walker, Otis Reese, Tommy Bush, Rick Sandage. They get 1 or 2 of those names, and then Georgia would be sitting pretty for the nation's #1 class 18.
Jeff, Tyson Campbell is going to be the first guy that we break down. But before we get to that, let's take a look at who Georgia already has signed in the 2018 class. We'll have this full screen up for you. What's the breakdown?
Well, first of all, you got to remember, it's kind of funny. Ohio State's clicked off 3 additions to their class since the early period. Georgia has been very silent. They've actually lost a commitment in Rashad Wildgoose since the early signing period wrapped up. That's how Ohio State has eked out a margin of about 2 points on Georgia. Look at those 5 stars, 6 5-stars. Tyson Campbell would be the 7th. The reason why things are so close is Ohio State has 19 4-stars, and the overall weight of those 4-stars are a little bit better than Georgia's 12 4-stars for 2018. But Georgia has a lot of 4-stars on the horizon that could eventually commit to the G, and that's something to really look forward to here, because Ohio State's only going to add maybe 1 or 2 more big names to their class, where Georgia, I know these are just dancing math, couch your slide rulers, everybody, but maybe the number that Ohio State can get to, best case scenario, is about 315. Georgia, with some mediocre luck plus Tyson Campbell, they can get up to 319, 320. But if they bring it home with all of them, they can get up to 325 points. And that would be a mega class, #1 class in the country. They would land the mythical national championship and be the first school in 7 recruiting cycles, not named Alabama, to bring home that nation's #1 recruiting class.
It's going to happen, Jeff. I can feel it. And Fred Young in the comment section says he can feel that Tyson Campbell is going to UGA. And let's just talk about him. 5-star cornerback, the #2 prospect in the nation at that cornerback position. 6'2½", 180 pounds out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. #12 overall player ranking. Doesn't Georgia have enough 5 stars, Jeff? Where does he fit into the roster?
Well, yeah, I guess, again, this is Wall Street. Greed is good recruiting for the rare breed 18. And see, the thing there is they don't really have that dynamo cornerback, especially, Hannah, it's everybody dig up and jog a very painful memory. Does everybody remember that national championship game? Georgia needs several Tyson Campbells in order to cover all those big-time Alabama wide receivers. He's long, got all the length. He has got a lot of speed. He is a true burner. Tyson Campbell, when all is said and done, people might be talking about him as perhaps the first, second, or third best defensive prospect in this class. And we've got all those 5 stars. That's saying quite a lot.
Campbell would make it 7 5-stars for UGA if they sign him in this 2018 class. That is a 24/7 composite modern era record. What's the history beyond that, though?
Well, it's going to be interesting for Georgia recruiting the 5-star corners. You got to twirl back those pages of history a little bit. Got to go all the way back to 2009 with Brandon Smith. That's the last time Georgia signed a 5-star cornerback. Now, mind you, a pure 5-star cornerback, not athlete, nothing like that whatsoever. And then you have to go all the way back to Paul Oliver, the late Paul Oliver out of Harrison High. If, and there's your if and when Tyson Campbell signs with Georgia, he would be only the 3rd 5-star prospect in program history to commit to the G. That would be a huge, huge win for Georgia. They shut up a lot of recruiting wins lately under Kirby Smart. They've yet to import that 5-star corner.
Jeff, a few people are commenting about our delay. We got about a 3-second delay, so just hang in there with us, everybody. Lee McKinnon in the comment section says Tyson fits well into our defense, so well not to commit to the G. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, he does. And, the funny thing there is you look at all the people that are courting Tyson Campbell. Tyson Campbell, if he would join Miami, he would be the 4th cornerback prospect to join the Hurricanes this year. I believe they're called the Stormwatch 18. They got a couple of top 10 cornerbacks as well. If you watched commitments, probably about 2 weeks ago, right around when Georgia hosted Tyson Campbell in his official visit, Miami added another cornerback prospect. You look at Alabama; they got lots of big names as well that are also going after a cornerback. Say Smith, Patrick Surtain. The list goes on and on. But Georgia seems like they've carved out a centerpiece role for Tyson Campbell in their class. The only other cornerback that Georgia has gotten a signature from or is even recruiting right now would be 4-star Chris Smith. Chris Smith is a fantastic player, but he's more of a slot corner at this time.
All right, everybody, that's Jeff Sintel getting the intel on the road in an undisclosed location. We'll have to wait till National Signing Day to find out what he's up to right now. You are watching Before the Hedges, the Georgia Recruiting Show, presented by Kroger. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, guys, and Kroger has everything you need, from sweets to gifts to cards, everything in between. Kroger has got you covered. Valentine's Day, Jeff, what are your plans?
Well, the Valentine's Day, you lose a little RPMs on Valentine's Day when you got little ones running around. Maybe you can steal away. Maybe you can get some babysitters. I don't know if there's enough time. Thankfully, there's no national signing days going on. But for you, Hannah, a young lady, I want to know this, and everybody else wants to get the intel on this one as well. Tell everybody out there your all-time GOAT Valentine's gift. What you get?
Really quick, I got a funny story. One guy, my former boyfriend, I'm now engaged, he got me a rose dipped in gold. Thought it was really weird. I think it's in the trash somewhere now. But you know what I really want for Valentine's Day? I want Quay Walker and Otis Reese. These guys are so important for Wednesday, Jeff. 2 more top 5 linebackers among top targets this week for Georgia. And just look at the loaded list of linebackers UGA already has. Okay, the number 1 linebacker, Adam Anderson. Nation's number 5 inside linebacker, Channing Tindall. Don't forget about 5-star Brenton Cox. He's on campus. He'll play linebacker this fall. U.S. Army All-American outside linebacker Azeez Ojulari. Where do these guys fit? Can Georgia get both Quay Walker and Otis Reese? It's all I want for Valentine's Day, Jeff.
Well, that's a double shot of linebacker right there. I tell you what, Anna, it's almost like, what has Georgia not been able to do in this recruiting class? And I shared the opinion maybe mid last week, and that caught our friend Brandon Adams' ear, and it was really dancing through his mind like sugar plums, I guess, or all those, hearts that say like "Be Mine." I remember all those hearts from back in the day. But with Walker and Reese, I brought up the thought that it's not maybe an either or with this class. What about the chances of Georgia adding both of those guys? And that would definitely tilt the balance of power for this team. Going to be a heavy defensively stacked team. You look at 2 guys like Quay Walker, they can play inside and outside. That goes for Otis Reese. They can cover. Otis Reese is the more physical thumper that's going to give you more highlight hits. Quay Walker might be the guy that shows up on every play and just shuts down slot receivers. One play is going to make a tackle in the box, and then he's going to rush the pass. Quay Walker has more of the versatility. Maybe I would say Otis Reese brings the hammer. There is a chance, and it has grown for me over the last 10 days, there is a chance that Georgia could wind up with both of those guys.
Which one is more likely to commit to the G?
Wow, good question there, Hannah. I would say, and it delves into relationships. I'm going to go Otis Reese as that guy because there's strong in-place relationships for Tennessee with Kevin Shearer and Jeremy Pruitt for Quay Walker. Remember, he was committed to Alabama. You look at his Twitter bio, maybe his Twitter bio no longer reflects that he's an Alabama commit. I kind of smelled that coming down the tracks a little bit, sniffed that out a little bit at the Under Armour game where it was maybe one of the teams that were always at the forefront of his mind. Alabama wasn't one of those teams. Now you look at Reese. Reese doesn't have that. We're talking about 2 flips here as well. Let's not forget Flip City here. But we're talking about 2 possible flips. Michigan is the school that Otis Reese is committed to. He doesn't have those entrenched relationships that have been built over time, kind of like the way Quay Walker feels about those coaches in Tennessee.
All right, Jeff, your fans in the comment section are absolutely dying for your prediction. What's your prediction on Otis Reese and Quay Walker?
Well, today's a big day. You were learning about who was going to go where. Georgia got some public private information that won't be made public for a couple of days or so. But I would say right now, if you had to place a Coca-Cola and wager on this, my thinking right there is it seems to me like Georgia could add both Quay Walker and Otis Reese. But of the 2, I would think Otis Reese seems more likely.
All right, that's pretty bold. That's pretty bold. All right, Mike Shepard's asking about Sandage. Drew Roman says, no way Sandage comes to UGA. All right, let's go there. Let's turn to North Carolina, where Rick Sandage has had an interesting social media-filled recruitment. His mom has been putting on 30-minute questionnaires with both South Carolina and Georgia fans on social media. She put out this video as well with his in-home visit with Kirby Smart, where there might have been a few little nuggets that he might be leaning towards Georgia. But what's the deal with Sandage? We all know that his mom went to South Carolina. She always says she is really focused on an academic school. What's your thoughts on Sandage?
Yeah, Sandage, first of all, we're creeping ever so closer into new media with the world of recruiting. You know, there's a lot of people after a visit or when news happens where recruiting reporters, what they do is they blow up the phones, the DMs, the text messages. I think Mrs. Sandage is onto something there. What if we simply use Facebook Live, all hopped on a feed, everybody asked questions, everybody wrote up stories, and then that way the Sandage family or any family that's an in-demand recruit right there can basically give a virtual press conference about what's going on. They do one interview. Any reporter that wants to chase that story can get in there. I think that's something that's very interesting, and she's been very candid as well. She's been talking about things she likes, things her son likes. If you look in that live feed there, I guess it's a window to a different world. You got Kirby Smart, Jonas Jennings holding up his team poster, his kind of marquee football card poster. If you look in the corner of that room, you see a Georgia backpack. Rick Sandage, I've been saying this for a while. Everybody out there, the narrative out there for Rick Sandage for probably the last 4 weeks was that he was a slight South Carolina lean. And I got some good information, you know, some really strong interviews, really good thoughts from his mother. And she probably walked that back a little bit. And she said it's more of an even ground. She told me, Hannah, of all things, that she felt her son's mind has changed 3 times over the last month between one school to another school and back to another school. This is one. It's a border battle. But I'll tell you this is a recruit that Will Muschamp simply has to have. This, for Georgia, with Rick Sandage, he's a great defensive tackle. I always feel that the games are won in the trenches on the defensive lines. It would just be another great piece for Georgia. And I guess that's the difference about where things are. But you see the way Georgia's going after Rick Sandage. They're going after him like he's the nation's #1 defensive tackle.
Yeah, Jeff, I know Brandon Adams on DawgNation Daily really broke down that video we've been showing to you where Sandage's mom told Kirby Smart, when he gets there, his room will be this clean, I promise. Might be a little overstated, a little bit broken down by Brandon Adams there at 10 a.m. on the DawgNation Daily. But you wrote earlier this week that his decision is between head versus heart. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, it's very good. Like his mom, like she is a money soundbite quote. She basically said when she had to learn how to look at this, is she said, every one of these coaches are basically, now she says this respectfully, but they're basically professional liars. And but what that is that it's all smooth, it's all polished. This pitch, it just rolls. What's that line from Gladiator? It's like honey potion being poured into your ear. It's always going to sound good. So she realized with her son, and then when they started breaking it down, that there's one school that has his head, and there's another school that has his heart. One SEC rival has the head, one SEC rival has the heart. Now, she even classified it. The heart, what's that one school that you're just psyched to get out and hyped to put on that jersey, that helmet, run out of that tunnel, wear those colors, and play in front of those fans? That's the head. That's the heart decision there. Excuse me. Decision is thinking with your old noggin right there, and that's the school that prepares him the best to be a success in life. It gives him the best academic training, the best strength coaches, the best nutritionists, the best support staff in injury recovery. All those people that are not going anywhere, like those coaches, if they get a call and a bigger check, they can hop in that moving truck. They're making this decision here based on the institutions. And a very important thing she told me this morning, today was the day that on the DL, the Sandage family was going to let Georgia, South Carolina, and Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina know all about his decision. That's coming right now. But the decision was actually made Saturday night. They're at peace with it. And the world will find out which way Rick Sandage is going to go on Wednesday.
Jeff, taking social media and his mom out of the equation, how tough of a decision has this been for him, and what's your prediction?
Yeah, it's been really very tough. It's so funny. Like recently, she even gave me this nugget, which shows that this is kind of very conflicting. She said, basically, you know, what made the decision. You know, she spoke generally about it, but the thing when she was asked to describe South Carolina, She said, one thing that makes you scratch your head and then one thing that makes you understand it. She said they've just always gotten a weird feeling from the recruitment from South Carolina. A weird feeling. Now, weird sometimes carries a negative connotation. It could actually mean unusual. It could actually mean exotic. It could actually mean rare. She classified it this way. She said that it just seems like the way South Carolina has recruited her son, it has always seemed like it was too good to be true, whereas maybe Georgia recruited him a little bit more steeped in reality.
Al Clements weighing in on Sandage in the comment section. He says Sandage would be so happy at UGA if he gets the offer. I hope and pray he makes the best choice for him. And again, we have to all remember that these are just high school kids making a huge life-changing decision on Wednesday. So we all just have to, hope for the best and hope they go between the hedges as well, Jeff. All right, let's move on to a topic I think is a glaring hole in the 2018 class. That is wide receiver. They only have one signed right now. That's Kearis Jackson. So that brings us to Tommy Bush. What's the status on Bush for Wednesday?
Yeah. Tommy Bush is a guy that definitely would be a luxury item for Georgia's class. And it gets complicated. I think when people talk about dominoes, everything else with this decision, what happens if Georgia gets a yes from Sandage, Reese, Campbell, and Walker? I wonder how Tommy Bush fits into this class. I still wonder how in the world, counting my fingers and toes, using some amateur arithmetic here, I still wonder, looking at last year's class and what they did in the blue shirt area, still wonder if Georgia can sign 25 guys unless they pull a gray shirt out. But Tommy Bush would be a guy, remember, not well known, but Georgia wanted him to sign during the early period. That's what they were thinking right there. But he opted to hold off and wait. Kirby Smart and James Coley visited him on Friday. They brought the Georgia G-Jet out there. They had a great conversation. They laughed. Kirby Smart reiterated that he is a priority and that Tommy Bush has a decision and has his decision made. And he has a spot in class. Bush today was one of those guys who made a private decision and told the UGA staff exactly which way he was going to go. And, that's awful nice of these two prospects to give Georgia, whether it's a yes or whether it's a no, it's going to give Georgia a chance to kind of back up a little bit, do a quick speed turn, and redirect maybe those last few committable offers or signee offers to maybe someone else in the class that might benefit from maybe a Quay Walker or a Tommy Bush or a Rick Sandage looking elsewhere.
Jeff, you always have the latest intel. What was significant today about Tommy Bush and Rick Sandage?
Yeah, that was the big thing. I mean, everybody wonders about what's going on there with, Wednesday's the big day. Wednesday's the big day. Folks, I think the most pivotal day of the Georgia closing kick of the class actually happened today. If Georgia knows that Bush wants in and Sandage wants in, or vice versa, or one or the other, that makes it very easier to make tough decisions there with guys like Otis Reese, guys like Quay Walker, whether guys can fit in the class. Of course, Tyson Campbell's in this class no matter what. I also think Quay Walker's in this class no matter what. Maybe even Otis Reese as well. So those three guys, you've got to remember, Georgia's class was already going to be strong, and this is kind of just the final pieces and how they can close out. Everybody's going to sit there on Wednesday and they're going to talk about, we didn't get this guy. Oh, that guy fell through the program's hands. The reality here and the proper perspective is that Georgia has just added the greatest infusion of talent in any one single recruiting year in program history.
Jeff, Tom Gross in the comment section wants to know, what's your prediction on Tommy Bush?
I think Tommy Bush is in the class. I think Tommy Bush probably, if you look at what's going on with Baylor and you look at what's going on with Michigan State, you look at what's going on with Texas, none of those schools have the depth chart convenience or the fit there. All those other schools, Texas included, have stocked up on a lot of wide receivers. None of those schools have just signed one. None of those schools just played for the national title game. And also, none of those schools have 2 5-star quarterbacks that would throw the ball to him. I think Tommy Bush is a little raw. I think he might redshirt his first year because he came out of a run first and run second offense out there in Texas. But once he gets it all lined up, remember, 6'4.5", 190 pounds. He's got 4.4 speed in the 40, and he has a 37-inch vertical. Tommy Bush is going to bring a lot to the table, and it's going to be somebody that Georgia really doesn't have in this class. And I think the kicker for me was that snowstorm. When all that snow fell, and then Tommy Bush was on his official visit in mid-December. When all that snow fell, Georgia's graduate assistants, they really were on the ball. They hung out. They hunkered down. They waited on him. They got him alternate lodging when they had to stay the night and their flights got delayed. And I do think that adversity, how Georgia would take care of him when things go off book and not according to script, I think that scored major points with the Bush family.
Jeff, we have covered the gamut today, the 5 most important names for Georgia fans to know on National Signing Day, which is just 2 days away, February 7th, this Wednesday. That's Campbell, Walker, Reese, Sandage, Bush. What happens if things don't go Georgia's way? Some of these guys don't commit to the G. Who are some other names to know?
Yeah, those are guys we haven't written about on the site because I do feel Georgia will finish off out its shopping for the 2018 class with a lot of those names. Everybody's got to remember names like Tramel Walthor. That's the commitment as well, the 3-star commitment out of Liberty County. It's still going to be a part of this class, it looks like to me, and also Jordan Davis, the 3-star defensive tackle out of Charlotte. That might make some interesting numbers game stuff if all those guys want in, especially if Sandage wants in. I don't know how Georgia can take 3 defensive tackles, especially if Otis Reese and Quay Walker want to join the class as well. Those are things to look for as well. It might be, and another point there on Tommy Bush is, I think Tommy Bush probably would like to be a part of the class at Georgia, but I don't know if Georgia gets all those yeses. And let's be mindful, Georgia hadn't got turned down a whole lot this recruiting season, very rarely actually. That's going to have to happen for some of these names. If you're going to go back pocket names, there's guys like Mario Goodrich. That's a cornerback from the Midwest. LSU is a thought there. Clemson is a thought there. There's an in-state guy, outside linebacker, defensive end type by the name of Caleb Johnson. I think he would be one of those emergency guys if both Quay Walker and Otis Reese decided to stick or go to another school. And then there's also a backup plan at wide receiver by the name of Antwon Green, another receiver out of Florida, another 4-star. I just can't see him in the class, especially how coveted he has been by North Carolina.
Dylan Orr in the comment sections, what about Caleb Johnson, Mike Massey, Holloman? Why has he not been talked about? Jeff, who is a player that we have not talked about today on our show that's underrated?
Yeah, there's one name I want to bring back into the focus here. And, those are the names. We just rattled off a whole lot of names that folks are going to think about there with this class. But the one name to think about that's really no one's talking about is a junior commitment. That would be the 2019 commitment, the 2019 target, Rylan Godey out of Kennesaw Mountain High School is going to make his commitment decision on National Signing Day on Wednesday. He's going to do that from Sports and Social. It's going to be about noon. That's another guy. Georgia's duking it out right there with Michigan and Auburn. That's another guy right there to look for in terms of a potential addition to the #1 class in 2019 as well. I think Rylan Godey is going to be a big-time tight end, nation's number 6 tight end for Georgia. And not a lot of people are talking about that name. So it's just one of those memory jog points I want to make here at the tail end of our show to remember that Georgia could get even stronger in 2019 on Wednesday as well.
Yeah, Jeff, according to 24/7, Georgia has the #1 recruiting class for this upcoming year, so we'll just have to see how that pans out. Hey, out of all of these names that we've talked about, who seems like the toughest pull for the Dawgs?
Wow. Hannah bringing the haymakers today when I'm on the road. I would tell you this. I think the toughest pull for Georgia, let's roll through the names again. Tyson Campbell, Quay Walker, Otis Reese, Tommy Bush. I think the toughest pull, it's one of those where I think maybe Georgia has worked the hardest and had the most ground to make up, I think the toughest poll might be Rick Sandage. I think that's that guy in South Carolina. It would be a great, great win for the Bulldogs if they could win that Rick Sandage stuff right there. But I think that's a story right there. I mean, I think he would probably, I wouldn't call it a stunner, but I do think that something there about South Carolina, it just seems like Rick Sandage is bound to South Carolina. Now, this might be a feint. This might be a counter because he does have two very strong relationships at Georgia with Trey Scott and Jonas Jennings. So that's one to think about. But a lot of these guys are probably 50-50 guys for Georgia. So when I'm saying, Rick Sandage might be the hardest one to reel in, that's a lot to think about there because I think Georgia has a great shot with Quay Walker, and I think Georgia has a great shot there with Otis Reese as well.
Jeff, I just said, according to 24/7 Sports, that Georgia has the #1 class in 2019. What is it going to take for Georgia to have the #1 class in 2018? I mean, that is just unprecedented right now in UGA recruiting.
Well, I think they're going to get it done, and I think it's going to swing towards the defensive side of the ball. I'd be very curious, and, nobody's going to get this intel, I don't even think, unless they're a fly on the room in Butts-Mehre Heritage Hall. But I would wonder what Georgia would do if all these guys wanted to say yes. My natural inclination, given the way that the program values the defensive side of the ball, my natural inclination would be to look for Georgia to stock up defensively. If all those guys want to say yes, I wonder how Tommy Bush stays in the class. But that, Hannah, would be a great problem to have.
All right, well, we have a little nugget for you guys today. Jamari Salyer told his mom, look, you're not going to have to do this much longer. Of course, he's the 5-star offensive guard. Let's take a look at this little snippet for everybody out there watching on today's show.
One day I was coming home from work, and I'm always working or moving or doing something. And I was just so tired. I don't know. I was super tired. I had a bag on my shoulder and I had a bag over here. And he grabbed me on my shoulder. He was like, Mom, you don't have to do this too much more longer. And that was something that I don't know how to describe my feeling. It was like, I don't want to have to do this too much more. But I could understand that he was saying, I got you in some type of sense. But in my mind, I was telling him, and I told him verbally, listen, I just want you to be able to take care of yourself. But I appreciate you, wanting me.
I'm glad that God gave me her. I don't think I would have been nearly as happy as I am now, nearly as successful as I am now if I didn't have her. And, he knows what he's doing up there. I mean, this is putting me and her together is obviously a true testament to that. So, I'm just glad I have her in my life. I'm blessed.
Jeff Salyer, of course, already signed with UGA, but just a little bit of snippet of what these guys are going through this week.
Yeah, I think, that right there, that Jamari Salyer snippet right there is we've done that documentary on his entire senior year and his season. And we've had chapters before the relationship between him and his assistant coach, Kevin Johnson, kind of like what makes him tick. And we've also had the opening chapter of it was like basically what drives Jamari Salyer. Now he's a Georgia commit. Now we're going to drop this week. We're going to drop chapter 3 of the Jamari Salyer this season. And this one focuses on the family. This one focuses on that little line in his bio. We all know he wants to buy his mama a house, but what does his mama think about that? What does his family think about that? Why does he want to buy his mama a house? And I think what we show there is maybe another unique layer of a player, of the nation's #1 offensive lineman, who just seems to have more layers to his personality than we ever expected out of a high school kid, even an All-American high school kid at that.
Dedrick Frazier says, love these kind of stories. That's a kid playing for more than fame. Yes, a very humble athlete. Hey, where can everybody watch those documentaries?
They're going to drop on DawgNation.com. We're going to have that one this week because he's obviously a Georgia signee now. He signed back during the early period, one of Georgia's 6 5-stars. And we're going to have another chapter, chapter 3. Going to be at least one more and for the Jamal Salyer story, for folks to get to know the future, entrenched road grader, I think, for Georgia on the offensive line. Jamari Salyer, out of Pace Academy, that's starting to look like a pipeline to the University of Georgia, especially in the realm of those 5-star, those All-American, those likely instant impact potential starters for Sam Pittman's offensive line. I think that's another good look at what Jamari brings to the table, and we'll be glad to have that for you sometime this.
All right, Jeff, I've got 3 of the most popular questions in our comment section all rolled into one for you to cap off the show. So how many spots are left? What are your predictions for Wednesday? And what is everyone going to be buzzing about come National Signing Day?
Well, I think they're going to be buzzing about the fact that Georgia has the #1 class. I think they're going to be buzzing when they look and see everything that's stacked up defensively. They're really going to feel a little bit better. Like, this is what we said at the top of the show, Hannah. You've got to be able to counter what Alabama's doing if you're Georgia. You want to be able to get the guys that will slow down that Crimson Tide offense. You want guys that will affect the launch points of that brilliant young freshman passer who will be a sophomore now. You want to get guys that can shadow those wide receivers. And I think Georgia, maybe the big thing people are going to think about now is add this class to the 2018 class, the 2017 class, and Georgia, especially over the last 3 years. And remember, by and large, the guys that hit the field are going to be the guys that come into the last 3 recruiting classes. And you're going to add a #6 class, a #3 class, and a #1 class for Kirby's first 3 years. And that's going to look like Alabama depth all across the board. Maybe a spot here, maybe a spot there. More cornerbacks, of course. Maybe more 5-star tackles, of course. But then in 2019, the future gets even brighter when Georgia adds those 5-star receivers. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to look at on National Signing Day. But we did stack up on the site today. I think I wrote it in the blog this morning, kind of a play card or a sort of a timeline to look for on National Signing Day. Georgia's going to have a lot of the hay would be in the barn by noon, especially by 12:30. And the only other player to think about there would be Rick Sandage, who makes his decision at 2:30. But I think it's kind of going to be, I think the plot thread will be unraveled by the time Rick Sandage makes his decision, because I think a lot of fans will know if Georgia gets a yes from certain players or no from certain players, then maybe good things are on the way with Rick Sandage, or good things are on the way for Rick Sandage in South Carolina.
All right, Jeff, James Crump on our Facebook Lives agrees with you. He says, yep, we will finish #1. We've had a lot of people guessing where you're at, but they're just going to have to wait for Wednesday. Thanks so much, Jeff. Your intel is the best in the biz.
Hannah, we need to get back together in the studio, but we kind of pulled it off. We weathered some adversity here, especially after the Marlowe's break. Glad to be back on the show with you.
Glad to be back with you, too. We'll see you soon, Jeff. All right, and we will be right back here on Before the Hedges next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, to have a full recap of National Signing Day. And of course, you're going to want to keep it right here on SEC Country and DawgNation for all of the latest in Georgia recruiting. Jeff Sintel will have it all for you. We will be doing live videos. Just keep it right here on DawgNation SEC Country. All right, guys, I will see you next Monday. You're not going to want to miss it again, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right back here. We'll take more of your questions and comments, and we'll see you then. This has been Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.